There's a drive way back. It might be. It could be. It is. Holy cow. Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. I am your hostess, the mostest, just CandidCubs Rogowskis, and I am jacked. I'm getting ready to go to the All-Star game, a tradition I started with one of my best friends from high school. Leaving on Saturday, I'm going to be there for the draft, I'm going to be there for the home run derby, I'm even going to make a little pit stop at the John Boy watch party for the All-Star game. Very much looking forward to it. So you guys are sending two people to the All-Star game this year, Showtime Imanaga and CandidCubs. Thanks again for joining. If you like what you hear, please make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit the subscribe button in your podcast apps, review us, leave comments, let us know what you want to see, what you want to hear, for this is a Cubs podcast for Cub fans by Cub fans. And if you are familiar with us, you probably have one question on your mind. Why do I have a mustache? Well, I made a bet with the Brewer blogs a few weeks ago for the Cubs and the Brewer series up in Milwaukee. And if the Cubs would have won that series, we would have seen a very baby-faced Jake McKibbin on this pod. But instead, you are seeing the face caterpillar of a baby-faced man, Mr. CandidCubs. Take a look at this short little montage in remembrance of my beautiful facial hair. Are not watching this on YouTube, you should check it out on YouTube. We are an audio and a visual podcast, so you'll get all the glory or not glory of my horrible mustache on the YouTube page. Right now, you just kind of have to imagine how ridiculous I look. Well, as we usually start out, we do the box score blitz here at Bricks Behind the Ivy. So we try to go over what has happened since the last time we spoke. And since we did not do a box score blitz last week, as it was the 4th of July, happy birthday, America, we will be doing a box score blitz just for the game starting on July 5th on. So put some time on those fake clocks. 3, 2, 1, go. Cubs welcome the Angels and are looking for some heavenly help as they are far and away behind in the standings. They took 2 of 3 in this series with a real laugher on Saturday in Game 2, but Game 1 they won 5-1. Game 3 they win 5-0. The highlight of this series on the pitching side, Justin Steele. Complete game, only 2 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 7 Ks. He has lashed out at the team, and since then he has done nothing but pitch amazing baseball. So great to see. Aiden Wisniewski in Game 3 was pretty impressive as well. He had 6 innings pitched with 2 Ks, given no runs. Not many hard hits in this game, not many whiffs, so only 4 whiffs. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a change in approach or just a very aggressive Angels team, knowing that there was potential long balls at play given the propensity of Mr. Wisniewski to give up the home runs. But nice to take a series victory at Wrigley before they went on the road. Off day on Monday, and the Cubs go to Camden Yards, one of the great ballparks in this country. The Orioles, they're hot. They've had a really nice season. They're a young team on the up and up. Go check out that roster filled with stars you should know. Adley Rutschman, Heston Kjerstad, Gunnar Henderson, who's going to be in the home run derby. Very excited to see that. Go check these guys out. Really fun baseball players to watch. Was not expecting much from this series given how the Cubs have been playing, but guess what? They have turned my expectations. won the first 2 games in the series. The first one 9-2, and they won game 2 4-0. Shota Imanaga was in game 2 with Jameson Taillon in game 1. Taillon has just been so good for the Cubs this year. He threw 6 innings pitched in this first game this season, or versus the Orioles. It was 6 innings, 2 runs, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Bullpen came in. They were nails. They threw 3 innings with 2 Ks. Hunter Biggie got his debut. Congratulations on making the show, Mr. Biggie. We're proud of you, man. Got that Ks, got that special fastball. But the Cubs scored 9 runs in this game, so it makes it a lot easier to feel safe about that. It was a fun win. Game 2, Cubs won 4-0. We had some good premium television with Showtime Shota Imanaga. Hey, now he's an all-star. He comes in, he throws 6 innings pitched in this game. He gives up only 6 hits, 1 walk, 6 Ks, some nice little struts here and there. Short rain delay did not stop the fun. Cubs win this one, shutout 4-0. Who's hot at the plate in these series? Well, it's my bae, Mr. Michael Busch, first baseman extraordinaire, all-star snub. And he has been really putting it on at late. It's only 6.5% walk rate. He's got 60% Ks while sporting a 414 average, 452 on base with a 724 slugging. Guy's been hitting a bunch of ding-dongs. Got 2 home runs since the start of July, but he is almost as hot as Mr. Ian Happ Daddy Hat. If you did not see in our last episode, we did hear finally from Boog Sciambi why he's called the Happ Daddy. So go check that episode out. Ian Happ has been a revelation. Just in July so far, 357 average, 438 on base percentage, 750 slugging. That's a 228 weighted runs created plus. The guy's in fuego. 3 home runs in that time frame, 11 RBIs. 12.5% walk rate, which is great. Still 21.9% strikeouts, but he is providing so much production for this lineup that has really, really needed it. So it was good to see, and in those series, we saw some glove work from Miles Mastrobuoni, some really impressive glove work, some nice highlights to add to his collection, and that is the Box Score Blitz. New standard setup for the Box Score Blitz, trying to keep our episodes a little bit shorter instead of going into the detail, trying to give you a high-level look on a series-by-series basis. Like what you hear, let me know. Like the old format, let me know. The key here is to let us know, as this is a Cub podcast for you. So, what's next for the Cubs? What's next for us? Well, this is the famed Mustache Me a Question episode as I pay up to the Brewer blogs. And I did get a few questions this week as I did look to highlight some of the fan voices, as you guys have been so supportive of me. And I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions of our podcast and our thoughts. So the question for this week is coming from Ryan Mortensen over on Twitter. He's asking, if the Cubs unload Cody Bellinger, what if they turn around and inquire about a player like Randy Arozarena? Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question and a really interesting thought process. You know, Randy Arozarena is famously known by Cubs fans for the Cardinals not identifying his talent. And, you know, he has not had a great year in 2024. Not that we'd expect. He's still only 29 years old. And, you know, ultimately, you'd like to see a little more production. He's got all that postseason history. He's a very interesting player. You know, I think it's a drop off in defense ability that I don't think the Cubs would be that interested in doing. He's only hitting .203 on the season with a .671 OPS, home runs 11. I just don't think this is the type of player the Cubs go out and get because of, I just think it's a very difficult fit. The Cubs have a lot of outfield prospects, and getting rid of a guy like Cody Bellinger, you're either going to try to get something for the farm system with the intent of someone from the farm system replacing the production of Cody Bellinger, or this is a more sell move. I'm not sure the Cubs are really in a position to be true sellers.
It's cute. I remember when I had my first beer.
That's so funny. Last time I heard that, I laughed so hard I fell off my dinosaur.
And, you know, I think I'm going to pivot away from this mustachio question to talk about this for a minute and my thoughts as the Cubs head closer and closer to the trade deadline, and we're about to be at the All-Star break. I don't think the 2024 Chicago Cubs are a team that's going to sell. And this has nothing to do with the results as we wait for one more game from this Baltimore series and then a tough trip to to St. Louis this weekend to play the Cardinals. There's going to be 4 games there because there's a makeup of a rainout from a few weeks ago. So 4 games. We're not entirely sure who's pitching some of those games. Kyle Hendricks and Javier Assad are apparently on track to be part of the plans for this weekend. But besides that, you can pencil in, Jameson Taillon and maybe Hayden Wesneski for that other start. But we will see how they put together the pitching for what's going to be a very long weekend in St. Louis. And generally, I think that in a 4-game series, especially at Busch Stadium, a split would be great. But getting back to the facts at hand, we're going to take a quick look at the Hot Stove standings. But before I do that, I do want to talk about something that's always in first place, and that is Wrigleyville Sports. Wrigleyville Sports, a proud sponsor of Bricks Behind the Ivy. Go check out their store. They have been kicking it since 1990, just 1 year younger than ya boy CandidCubs, and they have some of the best Cubs merchandise that I have seen, and they're in Wrigleyville. They have a great section of hats. I'm a big hat guy, so I love looking at their Cub hats. They also have custom jerseys, which they can turn around quickly. So if you order one on your way to Wrigley, you can pick it up from Wrigleyville Sports, get in the stadium, and cheer your head off in your brand new custom jersey. I cannot wait to come down to Wrigleyville Sports and get a Bricks Behind the Ivy custom jersey, so stay tuned for that. But if you're shopping at Wrigleyville Sports, head over to their website and at checkout, use the coupon code IVY10. Yes, for our longtime listeners, we've had a change in code. So use code IVY10 for 10% off. So check out Wrigleyville Sports today for all your fan needs. So we're going to look at the Hot Stove standings and take a look at how the Cubs are doing in the standings. It has been a very rough couple of weeks as the Cubs have not looked good, but there has been a promising shift recently as they've started to win series. They've won back-to-back series again with this Orioles series and with the Angels series. And I do hear people's comments about how it's just the Angels, but you have to beat the bad teams too. Wins are wins. And the Cubs sit at 44 and 49 at the moment of this recording, which is later in the afternoon on July 11th. And they are chasing not just, the entire NL Central. They're chasing the Brewers, who are still in first place at 14 above 500 at 54 and 40. The Cardinals are 5 games back of them, but 1 up on the wild card spot at 48 and 44. Pittsburgh Pirates are at 45 and 48. The Cincinnati Reds are at 45 and 49, having already won today, and the Cubs are in last at 44 and 49. So really bunched up behind the Cardinals. The Cubs giving an opportunity to kind of shrink or grow that distance between them and the Cardinals this weekend, right before the All-Star break. And it is the time of year where we're going to start talking about the wild card standings as well. We've got the Braves, the Cardinals, and the Mets holding the last 3 wild card spots behind the Phillies, Dodgers, and Brewers, who are the current division leaders in the National League, with the Padres, Diamondbacks, Pirates, Giants, Reds, and Cubs all within 3.5 games. So very tight still, lots of baseball to be played. And hopefully the Cubs can, make some noise maybe at the deadline and address some needs as the bullpen seems to be firmed up. So getting back to our original question and the thought process of the Cubs at the trade deadline in 2024. This team is not built to be traded, sold off. They're just not. That is the really basic thesis of my comments. They don't have contracts that are easy to move. They don't have contracts that are easy to move at this time of year. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying there is not a huge precedent for individuals under multiple-year, large contract control on a team to get moved. And it's interesting, as we look at the Twitterverse and the fan reaction to guys like Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki, they've turned it back on and they've turned into top 25 producing outfielders or producing players in this game, along with Michael Busch on a way to run creative plus analysis. And these, especially Ian Happ, are guys that, I had read online needed to be cut from this team. So Ian Happ has a full no trade clause, along with some other folks like Kyle Hendricks, and those things can be worked out, but it's just going to be very complicated. Nico Horner is a name that has come up a lot given his lower contract and the number of years of control, and the Cubs seem of surplus in the middle infield. So do you trade a glove and toolsy player that's young and controllable to get something to address the future? Maybe you do that. But I think if the Cubs are going to do that, they're going to have to get blown away by the offers they receive. And I'm not sure that's going to happen this trade deadline. And given the number of teams that are still involved, especially in the National League, within a striking distance of making the playoffs, which the Cubs included are within a striking distance of making the playoffs, I don't see Jed Hoyer unloading from this team and punting on this season, considering they were constructed to be a playoff team. Now, we can look at this roster and at the end of the season fairly adjudicate how the team is played, whether or not they make or miss the playoffs, and decide whether or not the season is successful. But in this moment, and given, if you look at like the New York Mets, who were, several games under 500, and defined sellers at the beginning of June, who are now 2 games above 500 and owning a wild card spot. That is how quickly things can change when the standings are this tight. Cliff Floyd and Mark DeRosa were on MLB Network this morning, which I implore you to go watch this video, which Alex Cohen, friend of the pod, shared, talking about how they still think as the Cubs as contenders, not World Series contenders, but contenders for this division, because there's a lot of guys in that locker room that know how to win, and they're not built to sell. So there will be moves made maybe on the fringes to make this a better roster. And they're getting healthy. Julian Merriweather might be back soon. Edward Alzolay threw off the mound. There's a lot of opportunities for this team to get healthy and to go on a little bit of run. What they're going to need is the bullpen to stabilize, which it has looked better in the last few weeks, which that's the good news. And they also need some offense. They need some guys to start hitting, which Ian Happ and Michael Busch have been that for the Cubs. So we'll see. We'll see what happens as we head towards the All-Star break, hoping that we have something to talk about. One more thing before we get to a guest segment. We always love hearing from Harry. Harry joins us again, back from the beach, to talk to us about something on his mind. Take it away, Harry.
Holy cow! Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Bricks Behind the Ivy and Deep Thoughts with yours truly, the man, Harry. Boy, it's great to be back here with all of you. Got some good deep thoughts to go over with you this week, and let's get started. First of all, let's get our heads together and a bow to the All-Star Shota Imanaga. Shota spelled backwards, by the way, is Actolis. Boy, that guy has been lights out all year. And konnichiwa to you. This guy had 7 games. He has let up 0 runs over the year. I mean, his only bad outing was against the Mets. And boy, oh boy, let's just not talk about that. I mean, it was kind of ugly. But overall, he's got a 2.97 ERA, 98 strikeouts, a whip of 1.11. And he just threw a gem last night against those Baltimore Orioles. Boy, oh boy, best team in baseball? Yeah, right. I tell you what, he looked at Jim Dandy. So to our all-star, first of all, we give you one of these. And for all you do, Shota, this bud's for you. Boy, oh boy. Before we continue, I want to send out hello to our good Cub fan, Marissa, who works out of the Kane County Cougar. Shout out to you there, and thanks for watching. But let's get going with all of this. I tell you, this ball club, we're winning a lot of late. I mean, we're hotter than a batch of flaming Teddy Grahams. I tell you what. I mean, you got where the bats are alive. I got the guys running stuff in the booth because, I'm hitting the sauce a little. Ooh, boy, oh boy. Hap's on fire. You got PCA is finally hitting. I mean, I about passed out the last night. I mean, he hit an opposite field base hit. Boy, hopefully that's a good start. You know, Mikey Tuckman is coming back off the disabled list. You know, Michael Bush has been carrying the ball. And you know, while we're on the subject of that, I think he got robbed. Pete Alonso in the All-Star game over Bush? Come on! What the heck is that? I gotta tell you. We gotta keep our fingers crossed, though, about Cody. He got a little dinger off the old middle finger, you know, in Baltimore. Hopefully his finger's gonna be all right. You know, but, you know, I also kind of found it kind of funny. You know, even our bullpen's getting better. You know, hey, we got in our bullpen a biggie and a little. Now, it's no Rich Garces from the 95 team, but I tell you what, both of those guys, I mean, this biggie guy throws over a hundo. I tell you what, boy, oh boy, but you know, we gotta keep going. The All-Star break is in our sights. If we look real closely, I think I see it coming. We're only 3.5 out of the wild card spot. Still plenty of baseball to go. So for all you do, this bud's for you. And from all of us here at the Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill, go Cub and so long, everybody.
The great Pat Erickson, everybody. His Harry Caray impression is second to none. I just love the dude to death. Thanks so much for everything you do for Bricks Behind the Ivy. And thanks so much for sharing your Harry impression with us on this fun segment. So this week, I had the opportunity to talk with Greg Huss from Cubs on Deck podcast and one of the writers and contributors and founders of Northside Bound, a Cubs prospect website, which I implore you to check out. There's some great conversation we have in here about the minor league system and players that are on the rise and how the prospects have kind of differentiated themselves across in the perspective that people have them across the country and what that next group under the consensus top players looks like and how challenging it is to project them, but in a good way because this system continues to be very, very deep, which is great news. So check out my conversation with Greg Huss. All right, Cub fans, thanks for sticking around. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Greg Huss, over from Cubs on Deck to talk to us a little bit about Cub prospects. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I'm always happy to talk prospects. I'm always happy to talk prospects like off of my show because like we get super into the weeds on my show, and I can pull back a little bit and look at it from like the broader context of the system. So that's always fun.
All right, so I'll take off my nerd glasses because I was kind of hoping we'd get into the weeds or into the ivy, not pun intended for our podcast title. But yeah, I like to always start with a question for our guests. Like everybody has a different Cubs story, and some people have the same story, but it's special to them and maybe family ties. How did you get into the Cubs, and what got you into Cubs on Deck?
Yeah, no, so I've been a Cubs fan my entire life since I was a little kid. Always been a fan of the Kerry Wood, the Mark Pryor, Sammy Sosa, getting into the Derek Lees and Aramis Ramirez's of the world, and always been a huge Cubs fan. And it was probably about 10 years ago or so. It was right around the time the Cubs were drafting Albert Almora and Dan Vogelbach and guys like that, where I was watching the Major League team. I wasn't yet into prospects, but I was watching the Major League team, and I was watching players get called up, specifically like the Brett Jacksons and Josh Vitters. Man, sad time. But I was watching those guys get called up to the major leagues, and I was like, I had no idea what the farm system looked like. I was like, where are these guys coming from? Like, how are they just like kind of showing up? Were they just coming from college? Like, how are they on the major league team now? And so I started digging into the farm system and kind of learning the minor leagues and learning like where these guys came from. I would kind of scour all the box scores on a daily basis and just read about just stat line scout more than anything, just kind of keep up with their numbers, check Baseball Reference and all that good stuff. And eventually I was like, that's not enough. I want to dig in and start watching these games and listening to these games on the radio and stuff like that. So started digging a little bit deeper, and eventually I started writing about it because I was tweeting about it anyways. I was just tweeting about minor league happenings, and I ended up writing about it on my own little blog. Ended up going from there, working at Cubs Insider for a while, talking about prospects there, and then my boss, the Cubs insider, came to me and they said, "Hey, would you want to talk about prospects on a podcast that doesn't really exist in this space? Like, there's no Cubs prospect podcast." And I was like, I've never really done that before, but yeah, like, why not? Like, sure, I'm talking about prospects anyways. Might as well put a mic in front of my mouth and let other people hear what I have to say. And so did that for a couple of years, and now I'm over at the Cubs on Deck podcast, where I kind of created my own show that goes through the Northside Bound website, which is a website that I co-founded with Todd Johnson and Greg Zumak. And so over there, we post episodes once a week about Cubs prospects. We dig in deep. We cover the top prospects. We cover the relievers down in South Bend, like everything across the board. We're talking about Cubs prospects on that show. So yeah, like I said, we release episodes once a week, and I have a blast. I just have a blast talking Cubs prospects, and not only like my big thing is making sure these prospects and these players have fans at the major league team by the time they get called up, right? I want people to know who these guys are by the time they make their MLB debut. So like people that are following just the major league team, like they know who Owen Casey is. They know who Jefferson Rojas is in a few. Like they know these guys. They know who these players are when they make their debut. So they have a good feeling of like, should I be a big fan of this guy? Yes. Okay, I'm all in.
Yeah, I think that's such a perfect niche, especially in the modern version of the game. I'm going to use that word without a better word. That so many people have, like, prospect capital is as terminology used in building a franchise and holding on to these chips, even though they're people, obviously. But yeah, how they use prospects, how they get called up, how they change the trajectory of an organization, like the time, the control. This is so much part of nomenclature in the game that understanding a farm system has become just as important as understanding the major league club. And it's got to be just kind of an exciting time to be a prospect nerd, knowing that there's a lot of people that are more tuned into that type of coverage because maybe their major league team isn't good, but here's this group of guys that are coming, and it gives you an inkling of when the next time their team might be good. And being the first to know, at least for me, that's always was the important thing, being the first to know a guy before a casual fan of like, hey, like this guy's coming and I've been watching him for years. It's gotta be cool to kind of fill that space.
Well, I think it's cool because I like to give a human element to these players, right? Instead of just stat line scouting, where someone's like, oh, like they put up good numbers in AAA, they must be good in the majors. It's like I like being able to say like PCA is as electric as he is. If you're just looking at the numbers for PCA, it doesn't really tell the whole story of him. But being able to tell the story of PCA and like how he's so aggressive on the base pass, how he's like incredible defensively in the outfield, like you wouldn't be able to know that, and like his demeanor in the dugout and on the field too. Like you wouldn't know that if you were just looking at Baseball Reference. And so like to kind of paint a picture about what these players are and the kind of people and players they are, in addition to just the numbers, is super, super important to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like his sixth tool when you're talking about the construction of a player. He's just a great personality. And yeah, I think so many people have this expectation of every prospect that makes the major leagues is immediately successful, because there has been, at least it feels like, this world where like Acuna and Mike Trout and guys come up and they're just superstars immediately, and maybe that is just revisionist history. But also like the game has changed so much that there is the widest gap we've probably ever seen between AAA and the majors, because of like if you can throw with velocity, then you're in a pen or you're in a rotation, not a AAA. It's not. We're not getting meaningful rotation information from most pitchers in the minors. Like guys are just there because they can cover innings, while people they're really trying to develop might be in the bullpen. So it's really just an interesting time. So you guys recently, and I want to say in the last few days, put out a new top prospect list, which I think a lot of Cub fans, and if they've been listening to this show, know some of the hot names like the Owen Caseys, the Jefferson Rojases, the Cade Hortons. And I don't want to give the whole list away, and we'll show a visual of some of the top prospects if you're watching this on YouTube. But who are some guys that have really run up the list that Cub fans should probably get accustomed to knowing, or maybe other teams might be getting accustomed to knowing as they look to address some of the issues of the major league club?
Yeah, this is a big week as far as prospect action goes, because this week is our over at Northside Bound. We're all releasing our individual prospect list each day. I was on Monday. And then Todd and Greg and Rich and everybody else is they're releasing theirs throughout the week, and then we're kind of culminating with a combined list of our rankings, and then we got the draft coming next week. But so like I think that in all of our lists, and mine included, I went 30 names deep, and it looks the list looks a lot different than it did a couple of years ago. Where a couple of years ago we were looking at the Cubs prospect rankings, and you had like 11 to 12 dudes that were all like right around the top 100, like between like 60, ranked 60th in all of baseball to like 150, like that range. There were like 11 dudes that were all there, and then there was quite a bit of depth throughout the organization too. Like I was prepared to go super deep, like 50 names deep in my prospect rankings.
Oh wow!
Now we're looking at a system that has kind of, between the graduations of guys like Jordan Wicks and Ben Brown, you're seeing fewer prospects up in that like 10 to 12 range, but the top 7 has really separated themselves out as the big 7 names in this organization. And those are all 7 guys because they're consensus top 100 prospects in all of baseball. That's really, really impressive to have 7 consensus guys. Outside of the top 7, it's kind of a crapshoot a little bit. You know, like if you look at our rankings over at Northside Bound, like each of our individual rankings, we're kind of all over the place after those top 7. You got guys like Jackson Wiggins, who was a draft pick last year. That's it. I have ranked as the number 8th ranked prospect in the organization. But the guy I want to talk about specifically here today is Christian Franklin, who I have ranked as the number 11 prospect in the organization. He's down in AA Tennessee right now. He's their leadoff man, and he's been terrific. When I did my rankings, I kind of gave a what I like and what I dislike about each player in my top 30. And for Christian Franklin, it's kind of like there's not much to dislike in terms of like what he's doing. There's a lot of things to like. He's kind of a 5-tool player. Now, I wouldn't say he's a plus tool in all 5 tools. Like he doesn't really have a weakness in his game, I guess is my point, right? Like he's got the speed, he's got the defense in the outfield. He's being a really good leadoff hitter for the Tennessee Smokies. He's showing off some pop. He's been really good. There's nothing to really complain about for Christian Franklin. Where you look at him, you're like, okay, well, like why is he not ranked like 1, 2, or 3 in this organization if there's no weaknesses? I think like for me with Christian Franklin, there's not one tool that stands out as you're like, oh, that's a great tool. Like he's got great bat to ball skills, or he's got great speed. Like there's nothing that he has that, like really stands off the page. Mm-hmm. And so I worry as he gets up to AAA and in the majors, like how is that going to play? We saw that with a guy like BJ Murray entering the season, where BJ Murray was very, very good during his time in AA last year. His promotion up to Iowa, he just didn't really like put the fear in opposing pitchers where like that power is going to display. And so because of that, like the walks have come down, the strikeouts have gone up quite a bit. He doesn't really have strong defensive skills at first or third base. And so like you need some sort of like driving tool that really sets guys apart. That's when you're looking at the top of this list. You got PCA. He's got a great glove tool. Owen Casey's got great pop. You got Moises Ballesteros has a great hit tool. Matt Shaw is a great hit tool. Like there's those great tools. Christian Franklin doesn't have that, but he also really doesn't have any weaknesses. So like you kind of take the good with the bad with what Christian Franklin brings to the table. But he's really close to being a top 10 prospect in this organization.
Yeah, that gives me like I always feel like the Tampa Bay Rays might be the king of like guys like Christian Franklin's profile, where they just mix and match in different matchups and have all these guys that can play everywhere in the field. And none of them are outstanding, but they're good enough baseball players that when used and deployed in certain ways, like they really can raise a roster floor. So I think, I have an appreciation for guys on a roster that do that, and knowing that like at minimum, that sounds like, major league bench player, which is not an easy job to have when you have to kind of just be ready and plugged and played, like the Miles Mastrobonis of the world, where like they have enough tools to be there, but they're not going to be a regular. But those roles are just as important. I do want to, before I let you go, since our podcast being weekly as well is focused on the Major League Club, sounds like people can download both of our podcasts and just get the full picture in a week. But I wanted to get your opinion on the Major League Club. Kind of dating when we're recording this, and this episode will be out tomorrow. Obviously, they're in Baltimore. They've looked a little bit better of late, putting 2 pretty solid games together. The record's still not great. Obviously, still a ton of time. What are your thoughts on the 2024 Cubs and how do you think they approach the remainder of this season, or are you as perplexed as we are here?
I don't know, man. It's the trade deadline is going to be super interesting to me because I don't know how it gets handled. I think that there's a lot of different things at play. I look at the Cubs roster and I just don't think it's a team that can be like they're clearly not a World Series contender, even if they go out and acquire a few different players to help them. And so that worries me a little bit. I just can't imagine a scenario where they're true sellers at the deadline. I don't see that happening, especially we don't know that Jed Hoyer's on the hot seat. Like we don't know that's the case, but like I can't imagine that his seat's awfully cool. And so I don't see a scenario where like he punts on the season and sells. Like we've been kind of inching more and more towards like this is a successful Cubs season, but like it's not happening this year. So I don't know how they balance that. I think that the bullpen is going to be better, I think, than what it's been throughout the season. I went on Crawley's podcast a couple days ago, and I kind of laid out that the Cubs were set up really well in the bullpen. Where like you entered the season like you were kind of worried about the depth, right? Like you were worried about that depth, but you assumed that like the guys that started the year in Chicago in the bullpen would be good that first half of the year, and then as like the attrition started to set in, and you started to see more injuries and some guys struggling as the season wore on in the second half of the season, you could take advantage of some prospects and some trades at the deadline to kind of supplement that. Because the way that the Cubs were set up is that depth in the minor league system, they all, in terms of relievers, all started at Double-A, right? So like they weren't ready to be promoted early in the season. And the Porter Hodges and Hunter Biggies that we're seeing now, like, and Michael Arias, who's now in Triple-A, like those guys were not ready to be promoted in a month into the season. They were ready to roll the second half of the year. And so it was just unfortunate that all the injuries hit at the beginning of the year. Now we're looking at a bullpen in Chicago that I think could be pretty solid. Like we're not talking like a top 5 bullpen in all of baseball, but like a real solid bullpen. I don't think that'll be like a net negative for the Cubs in the second half. So like that's good. The rotation has been really solid this year. I just don't know what to make of the bats, dude. Like I don't know what to make of those, and there's not really much help. That's like because the Cubs need impact bats. Like they need that dude, and they don't have that dude in the mind. Like Moises Ballesteros is in AAA, Owen Casey's in AAA. I think Matt Shaw and James Triantos wouldn't look a fool if they were called up to the major league level, but I don't think any of those guys are like you're going to plug in the 3, 4, 5 hole of your lineup and say like go out there and win us some games. And so like because of that, like it just gets super tricky. So I don't know what to make of the Cubs major league team right now. I think that this month is going to be super interesting. This is a jam-packed month anyways, right? You got the draft happening, you got the All-Star game happening, the trade deadlines happen at the end of the month. There's a lot that has to happen in order for the Cubs to be true buyers. I think it's probably just kind of what ends up happening is they sit on their hands to a certain degree and make maybe a couple buy trades, a couple sell trades, but nothing crazy on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think they are in a tough situation. I do point to that when Cub fans are asking for Owen Casey and putting Ian Happ and cutting him like they wanted a month ago off the team, and some of the ridiculous stuff you see in the vacuum we call Twitter. But it is really interesting. That injury thing I feel like has been such a huge component of how this season has gone, and I looked at the depth and the pitching depth, and, Jed was very confident going into the season in his commentary about it. And yeah, I just don't think they imagine slotting Ben Brown into the rotation in May. I think that was a guy that was going to see bullpen innings by maybe June. And Jordan Wicks obviously ended up in the rotation, which I expected he would pitch in the rotation at some point, but I think we also expected Justin Steele and Jameson Taillon to be on the opening day rotation, and Taillon obviously had to stay back, and Justin Steele got hurt like 3 innings into the season, and we missed a lot of him. So it's just been a lot of guys like Hayden Wesneski too. I think is a really interesting story, and one that I try to think of kind of what you said, the human side of baseball. Like he was sent down to AAA so he could be stretched out, so he can be an option at starter for the Cubs when they need an extra starter. But then they immediately needed him, so they brought him back up, and he was starting for a bit, and then as guys got healthy, they put him in the pen, and as the pen became ineffective, they tried to put him in like high leverage, like short burst innings so they could use him more. But I can't imagine like learning to stretch out for a start.
man.
And then immediately having to stretch out to throw as hard as you can and be like a 2-pitch pitcher in the 8th inning. And that's why I feel like we start seeing those home runs, because he was trying to be a strikeout pitcher, not a pitcher. And like, that cannot be a fun development ride for a guy that is trying to look for some consistency, as he has been bounced around this organization like a Swiss Army knife of the Cubs pen.
It's the hardest job. It's the hardest job a pitcher can have, is what he's doing right now. Bouncing back and forth between the majors and AAA, bouncing back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen. It's why what was it last year where Mark Leiter Jr. came out and said that Javier Assad is the best pitcher in the world? Was that what the quote was? And it's like and he said that because like at the time Javier Assad was like fulfilling like a really difficult role where he was a innings eater out of the bullpen, but also kind of filling in as a spot starter from time to time. It's like, that's a really tough role to have. I'd much rather have Hayden Wesneski just like be a 3-inning reliever and know that he's a 3-inning reliever in Chicago for 4 months and like be confident about that. But unfortunately, that's not the way that this roster is set up, and that's not the way the injuries have hit this team this year.
Yeah, and I was definitely concerned with roles, like a lot of swingmen that they had in this rotation, and thinking about, all right, every swingman you have on there's this calculus of that's a guy I now can't use for 2 days, which shortens your pen. And when they started the season with like Javier Assad and potentially Jordan Wicks, at least that was the thought process, as these swing guys, then it's like, well, then, all right, cool. Now we have a 5-guy pen. And what if tomorrow's game goes out of control and we really need someone to eat innings? Like, what are you sliding down to? And then it goes all the way to the roster construction thing of like Drew Smiley's being paid a ludicrous amount of money to be a lefty specialist. And it's like, and that's not what he is. So, but that's for another episode of Well, before we go, just give us a quick plug of your website and this content you guys have coming up. And real last quick question too, are there any guys you are focused on the Cubs picking in the draft that is coming up on Sunday, which I will be at? I'm very excited to be back at the draft this year.
Very nice. That is super exciting. Yeah, as far as guys in the draft, I a lot of times defer the draft expertise to our other 2 guys, Greg Zumack and Todd Johnson, on our site. They'll be on our live draft show. But I defer to them. But I will say that I have done some digging in some of the players. I think that if the Cubs can have Trey Savage drop to them at 14, it doesn't seem likely, but it seems like there's just a glimmer of hope that might happen. I would love to have Trey Savage on this team. James Tibbs is another name that I really like out of Florida State. I know Cam Smith has been rumored to the Cubs a lot, and I think that's a really good third baseman pick as well. So there's a lot of names. I think that I'm looking at the college guys, specifically the college bats this year outside of Savage. The high school arms and bats scare me a little bit more in general, but especially this year. So Cam Smith, James Tibbs, Trey Savage, those are the 3 guys I'm keeping my eye on for the draft on this Sunday. You can find me over at the Cubs on Deck podcast, anywhere where you find this show. You can also find our show. You can, it's me and Brian Smith do that. Also Greg Zumack. We also have the broadcasters on filling some weeks. So that's a lot of fun. You can find my writing over at Northside Bound. The big thing that we have coming up is our live draft show on Sunday at 6:00. The first pick comes in at 6. We will be live over on the Northside Bound YouTube page covering the draft as it happens. We'll be covering it live. I'll be kind of in the background letting Greg Zumack and Todd Johnson do their thing. We'll have the picks coming on the screen over on YouTube as they're happening. We'll be covering the draft from that first pick all the way to the Cubs pick at 14, and then we'll be sticking around after the Cubs make their selection to kind of analyze their pick and stuff like that. So we'll be live that entire time. It'll probably be a 2-hour show. Come join us if you want to find out more about the Cubs selection, and that'll be a lot of fun. But thanks again for having me on. This was a blast. I love it.
No, thank you. And everybody just get your laptops ready, pop on that live show, turn on MLB Network to watch the actual draft and get that real-time reaction of maybe the next big thing for the Cubs. Thanks so much, Greg. Hopeful to have you back soon.
Appreciate it.